Coming to you live from across America, the most dangerous people in the United States. It's the Trans Narrative Podcast.
Oh my god, hello!
Hey, I love meeting all of you. This is just a wonderful platform, the Trans Narrative Podcast with all trans people. Woo!
Yes, welcome all across the country. We are the most dangerous people. I don't. Anyway, so it's so good to have everyone here with us today. I am joined by Ocean Kane, our co-host today, and our guest. Hi, Ocean. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, so glad to have you here as our co-host. Oh my God, what? Just co-host? Wow. Big steps. And Kevin Werner, you're joining us as our guest co-host today. That's so exciting. I'm so glad to have you, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing great. It is so good to be here, Caroline. Thanks for having me on. This is such an honor.
Well, it's so good. It's so good to have you, really.
Yeah.
And today we are joined by Jenna Daugherty. Jenna Daugherty.
The second time.
Did I say it right, Jenna Daugherty?
You said it right the second time, yeah. You said Dottie, which I've never heard before. That's hilarious.
Listen,
Sometimes
we
I
can
get
around.
what?
We can edit around it and pretend we got it right the first time.
Oh, definitely. Normally I get Daugherty. That's always fun. And then Daugherty I got one time, which was weird. But yeah, no, it's Daugherty. Simple.
Daugherty.
And
Jenna Daugherty, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I know I met you, Caroline, on Facebook, and I thought it was just super rad that you barely knew me and you took a chance on me. And this is what I love to do, talk about myself, because I'm an extrovert.
Yay.
And so,
I love to talk, and that's why I made a podcast.
Trans extroverts. Yay!
yay! So,
Gross.
And before we get started, I would love to hear how Kevin's doing. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Hi, I am doing wonderful today. I'm joining from Ypsilanti, Michigan. Most people do not know of this town, but it is right near Ann Arbor, Michigan, the place of the annual Hash Bash that is coming up first Saturday in April.
I love it.
It's pretty historic. But I am a Jewish with a Jewish/Unitarian Universalist. So it sounds like I'm George Santosing it, but I'm really like Jewish. And I love the theater. I grew up singing musicals and all that, and in the middle of writing Stonewall the musical to premiere sometime whenever finished and done, and smart companies want to take it on. So we're fingers crossed, and we're making our little way with that. And I have been a lifetime activist for all of my life, and that's when I figured out, hey, I can create something like Sondheim and have the power like the late great Jim Toy, who is a founding member of a lot of different groups in Michigan, and he was noted to be the first openly gay man, quote unquote, in Michigan to come out. That's one of his jokes that he'd say, being a good troublemaker along the way. So thanks to people like Jim Toy, I'm also here and happy to share my trans joy and all that. So
We're so glad to have you here as our guest co-host today. And Ocean, it's good to see you. It's good to have
Thank you for
back.
having me back.
Yes, so glad to have you back.
I think we did everything else. I think
intro about me. Oh, that's a classic introvert. Gross. Don't worry, most of my friends are introverts. That's how we work. I
Two
meet
of my,
introverts and they're- What's that?
two of the co-hosts on this show are introverts. I won't say who, but if you listen close enough, you might figure out just who they might be.
I don't think it's Lucy because I love Lucy's fiery attitude from when I was listening to the Marla episode.
Marla Alpert. Hey, Ocean was on
Yeah.
that
We're listening to
episode.
the Marla episode. That's the first episode I did.
Oh my God. I love it.
Yes.
That's awesome. I as a big theater dork, I loved Marla talking all about music and it was fascinating to hear her talk about being trans on Broadway because as someone who's in theater, it's another thing I've always thought about too was getting back into musical theater, but I also had the same concerns about my voice that Marla does. And so to be able to hear that was really cool. So,
I have to go back and listen to that Marla episode now because
yeah.
I need to hear that. If I didn't already hear that and like somehow forget it, because I love talking about musical theater. I could talk about that all day long.
Well, if you
and-
like musical theater, you should check out AJ Lorenzini. It was our second episode of the season. We talk a lot about musical theater as AJ is actually a drama teacher at a local high school here in Indiana.
Oh my God.
Yay!
I love that.
Yes,
I loved
absolutely.
Tiffany Taylor's episode too was awesome. And when she said she usually bores people talking about theater, I was like, nope, you never bore me talking about theater.
We learned a lot with Tiffany. We love that.
We watched the Tony Awards together and we're like, ah.
Yes. And don't forget, there's a whole season from last year too, 33 episodes.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh
So
my.
Jenna, I wanna ask you, what is your favorite show?
Like episode or
musical?
Like musical.
Oh, it's tough. I did The Music Man when I was a sophomore, and that is one of my all-time favorites. Of course, I was my former self, and
Okay.
I wanted to be Harold Hill, the lead, and I didn't get it,
Course. Oh.
and I was annoyed, but I was also a sophomore. So I ended up being Tommy G-less. He was
Okay.
the punk kid that dated the mayor's daughter. And fun fact, I'm still friends with the mayor's daughter today. So
Very
we hang out from
cool.
time to time and we talk about, our times back then. So it's probably that or West Side Story.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I would have to go with West Side Story over Music Man any day. Sorry, that's just my
Rude.
Sondheim. Sorry.
I don't even know if I could be on the show now. How
I'm
dare you?
sorry. I'm
Yeah.
That's okay.
Leave, Kevin. I'm just
Man.
kidding.
well, that
Just
and
kidding.
the Music Man was what closed Beetlejuice on Broadway too early. So that was my own little personal crazy little beef with the Music Man.
Jenna,
and-
did you ever
Sorry.
listen to Bob and Tom in your life? The radio show syndicated throughout the nation, Bob and Tom in the morning.
No.
Have you or Kevin?
I've heard the name of it, I'll be honest, but I've never actually heard the program.
Okay. I just brought that up because Jenna, you have such an infectious laugh. And you have a laugh that reminds me of the Bob and Tom morning shows. Like, you get those morning shows where they're all just like cackling and laughing. Like, it is just great. Everybody laughing. You have that beautiful laugh that's just so like, it's great. I love it. This is what I
Well,
say.
I mean, I would just love to see you doing anything, Jenna. Like, your
Oh my God, thank
personality,
you.
your voice. Like, I can only imagine how you would be like singing and performing and telling jokes. Like, I can only imagine what that would be like. And
So, story of my life.
Yeah.
My laugh is one of the many things that have defined me throughout my life. I went to a private Christian school, was very small, and it was always the joke that you could hear me laughing from the other end of the campus. And same thing with my voice. It's my diaphragm was naturally turned up to 11 when I was born. A lot of us of the Daughertys are very loud, boisterous people, but I just happen to be the fucking loudest of them all. So, and it's definitely a double-edged sword. Let me tell you that. But yeah, I love being expressive in front of people. I would stand behind the curtain on opening night, like whatever play that I did, and I would listen to the crowd just, you hear that buzz, and I would get so pumped. And a lot of my friends, even my theater friends, were like, "How do you do that? How do you get so excited? How are you not so nervous?" I'm like, I have like a tiny amount of nerves, but like as an extrovert, like you naturally take those nerves and you channel it to like positive energy. Because my thinking is, when I would be behind the curtain, I would say, man, all these people don't know how good I am, and they're going to be so impressed when I come out on stage. And I would tell people, like, you can't teach somebody that. If I could teach that, I'd be a fucking millionaire. And so
Seriously. How to cure
it's just,
stage fright in 5 minutes. There we go.
yeah, exactly. But then that would make me a scam artist, right? It could be like a typical YouTuber. No, just kidding. Okay, cool. So I did Ancestry.com, and it basically came back and said 100% white bitch, right? Like,
as it would.
What's that?
I said as it would.
As it would, because I'm pale, and it was like 45% British and 15% Irish, and also Scottish, Russian. And yeah, so I was just like, God damn, I really am just like Wonder Bread white. But my ancestors came off the Mayflower, which is kind of crazy. So direct descendant of those crazy Puritans.
God.
I'm sorry. My condolences, I guess.
Yeah, right? No kidding. I was, because I come from my parents were like cuckoo, crazy fundamentalist Christians. And so like they love the fact that, like, because we're direct descendants of William Bradford. He was cuckoo. So yeah, my life has been quite crazy, but super fun at the same time.
Crazy. What do you mean by crazy?
I mean, I grew up homeschooled in a fundamentalist conservative Christian household. My world was completely sheltered until I was like 9 years old. So, and I'm here in the most. Was that?
What's the shift that happened at 9?
I started playing Little League, and I got to be part of the real world for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Not just going to church 3 times a week. And I've always been a very extroverted, outgoing person. And so, like, in my world, I thought I was the coolest because I had all these friends at church. And
Not the church friends.
Cool church crew.
Not the church friends.
Cool church crew. We love Jesus.
Yes, Jesus loves me.
Was that?
Yes, Jesus loves me.
Jesus loves me, this I know. Anyway, we did this program called Awana. I don't even know if you know what that is.
No,
I know Awana gummies.
Oh, Awana. So it was like this Christian thing that they try to make like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, but it's just like basically an excuse to get people to like memorize Bible verses and shit. We didn't actually do any outdoor camping stuff. Anyway, it stood for Approved Workmen Are Not Ashamed. Super corny. Everything about the Christian culture is super corny.
Well, what made you realize? I'm figuring it's part of Little League. What made you realize that maybe you weren't as cool as you thought you were?
Oh, okay. So when first off, I'm super uncoordinated. Like I can sing, I can act, but like when it came to anything athletic, I was horrible. And then on top of that, I'm this dorky little sheltered homeschooled kid who has no reference pretty much to the outside world. And so all my teammates are like, these first time I hear like profanity in like a normal setting. So that threw me off.
Hey, it ain't slow.
Somebody said the F word. And was that?
Nothing. Continue.
And so I went up to them and I said, guys, Jesus doesn't like when you say that word. And they like looked at me and just laughed their ass off. And because my last name is Doherty, right? So they started calling me Dorky. And so, of course. And so here I am, this uncoordinated dork who sits the bench most of the time. It's that or it's right field, because that's where all the kids that can't play go. And so it was so incredibly like eye-opening. I had this moment when I was at home and I was just like, oh no, I'm a dork. How did this happen? And it was at that moment that I realized my parents are not going to help me out with this. It's not going to happen. So I had to do everything on my own. I had to learn everything on my own. And by the time I stopped homeschooling when I was 13, I went to a private Christian school, so it wasn't much better, but it was better than homeschooling. And by the time I got there, nobody knew. And I was just like, because it's crazy growing up so sheltered and homeschooled. And we were in the most liberal part of California. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. It's specifically a little city here called Fremont. And so
Fremont. Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with Fremont. Yeah.
Oh, you are? How?
Well, my brother and sister-in-law lived in San Francisco, like proper, for like 8 years, and then moved back for my brother to have twins, and need the support of the Michigander family connection. So that's when they moved back to Michigan. But yeah, they spent 8 years in California, in San Francisco specifically, with my brother's best friend, and so yeah.
Well, how
beautiful
cute.
place. Yeah,
it is. It's beautiful. Although most people who are like native NorCal don't really care for San Francisco. We just kind of are like, yeah, it's cool. It's crazy because it's like #1 tourist destination, and we're like, yeah, I've been there, done that. Like, it's so hectic. Like, I'll spend like a day there, and then I'm like, okay, I need to go back to Fremont. Like, it's just.
So when it comes to like being sheltered, like I had a very sheltered experience, and that hindered my ability to really come to terms with who I was until much later in life. And given that you were homeschooled in a very fundamentalist environment, like how did that impact like your ability to come out?
Oh my God, it significantly impacted it. Because as you know, our society is like, so drenched, or however I say that word, with toxic masculinity. And so the toxic masculinity on top of the shame of being, from a really Puritan, conservative, homeschooled culture, I knew when I was 5, I would sit in my bed at night and I would pray to God and I would ask him to turn me into a girl. And of course it didn't happen. I love your face.
I had the same story.
No way.
It started at 14 and it lasted about a year. I went through not only like the Christian God, but I went through like every God I could think of, and even like the universe.
Oh,
like, just let me wake up a girl. I would literally cry myself to sleep at night. And I was gonna die with that story because I didn't know what being trans was. Not until I was an adult.
I didn't know how to put it into words. I just always knew. I was just like, I don't feel comfortable being a boy. I never did. But I knew I was smart enough at a young age to realize that my parents would never understand. And not only would they not understand, they probably would have put me in some kind of conversion therapy or something. Because, I mean, my parents, okay, so to give you just an idea of what my parents were like, and I'm not trying to shit on them. I really honestly did think they did the best they could, but they also were the types that protested abortion clinics in the 90s. And my dad even took me to a protest when I was 8 years old. And it was actually the first time I saw a middle finger, so that was cool. And so yeah, I mean that was the environment I was living in. Like there was no way I was going to be able to come out. So I'm sure, as you know, you go through these phases where it's just like, you're like, oh, maybe I am, but I just won't tell anybody, and I'll do it in secret, and then you just feel defeated and you realize oh, it's never going to happen. And so you just lie to yourself and you say, no, this is who I'm meant to be.
What was that?
Huh?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask you, what was that moment like when you realized that you couldn't keep it a secret anymore?
Oh my God. I mean, I don't necessarily know if it's a moment per se. There were little moments throughout like my upbringing that I slowly broke me down to the point where I could be able to come out, because my life specifically, I am a very extroverted, outgoing person. And so in high school, up and through early college, I had developed this personality of me as my former self. And for the most part, I was a pretty happy-go-lucky person. And I was fairly confident. But there was always something missing that was like, I wasn't content. But the reason why I say that is a lot of people didn't see my coming out coming. They, a lot of people told me, wow, you're such a happy person, this and that. And it was what it was. I was really good at compartmentalizing. But throughout my life, there were moments, just tiny moments, where it would break through and go, maybe this is a possibility. One of the first ones was when I was in high school, actually. And Spirit Week, we would have Twin Day for Spirit Week, one of the themes. One of my girlfriends, Amy, came up to me and she was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if you were my twin? And I was like, at first I was thinking, does she know? How did she know? And I was just like, oh, duh, I'm the big class clown. Of course she's going to get me to be, the twin. And so I said, sure, hilarious. Let's do it. Inside, I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And this was at a Christian school. I was really surprised that they were cool with it. I came to school as her twin, and no one recognized me until I started talking. And I was like, oh, And my friends were all like, wow, you look so good. Wow, blah, blah, blah. And one of my friends was even like, this was classic. I was in high school in the 2000s, right? This was probably about 2003. So the classic no homo thing was huge then. And so my friend was like, hey, no homo, but you got a nice butt. And I was just like, okay. So anyway, long story short, I was so overwhelmed with happiness and joy because, oh, wow, people actually think I look good. And people asked me, did you think about a name? And I was like, well, no, I didn't really get that far. And the only thing I'll ever say about my dad's name is it started with a J. And so one of my friends was like, you should pick a J name. And I said, that makes sense. And one of my friends was like, what about Joan? I was like, ew. Like, no, what am I, a 50-year-old woman? No. And so one of my other friends was like, what about Jenna? And I said, oh, I really like that, actually. That's really cute. And at the end of the day, when it all went away, I told myself, if this ever happens, that's going to be my name. And so I actually had my name picked out long before I came out. So that was one of the first moments. And then it was little moments after that to eventually I got to the point when I was 28 years old, I came out. So, and
Why
through
28?
that point, sorry, go.
Why 28? What happened when you were 28?
A myriad of reasons. It's unfortunate now, but it was 2015. That was the year that Caitlyn Jenner came out. And yeah, I know. It's unfortunate that she was my catalyst, but she was. And I had moments before that. Like I said, I was Katy Perry for Halloween in 2011, and that was another big moment because I hadn't really publicly done it since high school, and I got even more positive validation than I did. And then I was the Blink-182 nurse for Halloween 3 years later. And between that time, I had started going out in secret. Between 2012 and 2015, I started going out as Jenna in secret because I wanted to see if this was something that was a possibility. And
sorry, I'm going to show my ignorance here. What's the Blink 182 nurse?
Oh, the Blink one, it's like an album. It's actually quite classic. I'll turn my brightness down and pull up a quick. Actually,
it is an all-time. Yeah, it's an all-time classic album cover.
Okay, from the album Blink 182.
No,
it's actually like rather tragic because like it's actually not a great story, but
yeah, not a great story now.
Iconic. It was a
very iconic.
There you go.
The album,
we'll post it in chat so you can see. I just dropped it in chat.
Yeah,
now I got it. I remember that.
That was their mainstream debut, Enema of the State, and I was 13 years old, and they're one of my top 5 bands, and I always loved them, and I also always wanted to be the nurse at the same time, and so from a combination of going out in secret and then that catalyst, I told myself, okay, I'm coming out very soon. And it wasn't until, I watched Caitlyn Jenner's last episode as, interview as her former self. She said things in there that just made me realize, I need to stop hiding and be who I am. And like I said, it's unfortunate that she was my catalyst, but it is what it is, right?
What was the hardest thing that you discovered when you came out? The hardest thing that you had to realize that now you have to deal with as part of your life?
The hardest thing I had to deal with was losing people that I loved. Without a doubt. I knew that my dad was going to disown me. You hope, you pray, even though I'm not really Christian, but knowing who my dad is, I thought, there's always a Hail Mary, miracle, whatever. But no. Right. As soon as, and he didn't even tell me, which was the most cowardly fucking thing. I had to find out through my sister.
Oh. So your sister told you that your dad never wants to talk to you again? Or I mean...
Yeah. So what it was when I first I came out July 4th, 2015. And I dedicated that year as I called myself a cross-dresser, but it was only because I wanted to get used to it myself, and I wanted my friends and family to kind of have a buffer.
Right.
Because I knew that I was going to be full-time, and it was a lot for everybody in my life. And as much as I wanted to be who I was, I also wanted my friends and family to kind of have a head start as well. So when I took that plunge, they would at least have some kind of, getting used to it, period.
Yeah. Easing into the transness,
Easing into the transition, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, every time I saw my dad, I was my former self. Because I just did not want to have...
As you
What's
really
that?
Are? So your dad has never seen you to your knowledge as you really are?
Oh, no, he has.
Oh, he has?
Yeah.
How is that?
It's awkward as fuck. Because he pretends I'm not in the room. He doesn't even acknowledge my presence.
So to maybe change up a little
Oh
bit.
no, I mean we can keep talking about this.
No. I'm actually like more asking because like these are a lot of negative emotions that are associated with it. I've done very similar things. Well, I've actually directly outcasted quite a lot of my own family and been outcasted, and that causes a lot of negative feelings. And so I have to seek a lot of really positive coping mechanisms in order to stay kind of on top of things. What do you do to
Oh,
keep yourself on top of things?
it's hard to say per se. I started going to therapy not too long ago. I didn't really go to therapy before, and I've always been an incredibly open person, and for just whatever reason, it didn't cross my mind. I'm the kind of person that's like, when I'm dealing with stuff, I just like to dive head into like other things that are positive and help me deal with like my emotional state.
Mm.
Like I surround myself with a bunch of people that are super supportive and helpful. And I'm also just focused on lots of different goals that I have. And I just kind of deal with negativity in the meantime, or, I vent to friends and whatnot. But I don't know, I've always been a very positive minded person. And so for the most part, it's been fairly easy to kind of just keep going.
Right.
What's a goal that you're working on now then?
Well, my big goal, of course, is bottom surgery. I know it's fucking nuts, honestly. Like how far I've come. I've okay. It's because right now I am going through all the hair removal
Oh,
to
That's necessary for
and painful as shit, I'm sure.
Mm.
oh my god, it is. I'm at electrolysis. Yeah. So I'm past laser. And I do it twice a week. One for my face. But it's so draining because it's just, if you don't know what, do you know what
I'm familiar with it as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're frozen.
Oh yeah, you froze on us.
I know that's not one of the side effects of electrolysis.
basically
so.
they put it directly into your hair follicle, and it's like really low direct currents of energy, like electricity into your follicle, and it kills the root, and they pull it out, and they do it one by one. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And so I've already had 4 surgeries, 3 for my boobs, 1 for my face. And so being able to look back at how far I've come, but also realizing like, wow, I've still got this to go. It can be pretty, and it gives me a lot of anxiety, but at the same time, it's like, it's incredibly exciting. And it's just, there's so many different, just heavy amounts of feelings and emotions that I'm feeling. And it's kind of hard to process it all at once because you're going through so much. But yeah, that is for sure. Like, it takes basically, I guess what I'm saying is it takes so much to focus.
Yeah.
That I really can't really think about much else.
Has there been any like found family that you've come across that helped you get through these milestones where you've come through already so far?
Well, oddly enough, I am very, very, I tell people all the time, as hard as my transition has been, I think I'm one of the luckier, more privileged ones because so I met my bestie, Laura. I love her to death. She's a cis woman.
Okay.
But she's a ride or die type of bitch, like she just fucking, first day I met her, this was back in 2015, like 3 months after I came out.
Yeah.
She was, yeah, crazy. She looked just like super pinup punk rock, tats down her arms. And I was like, she's cool. She's hella cool. And she's beautiful. Because I had no girlfriends, like ones that I could count on at the time. And I just went up and talked to her and I said, girl, you're beautiful and I love your tats, blah, blah, blah. You're so cute. And we hung out that night, and the entire night she said nothing about my transition. She just asked me about me.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know where this is going, but we are going to be friends. And she ended up being my best friend. So she's been through everything with me.
Wow. That's really
Yeah.
nice. Like,
Yeah. She made me like, she gave me my first opportunity to be a bridesmaid. Yeah, I love her to death. I would do anything for her.
wow.
And most of my siblings, not most, all my siblings.
All your
I'm in the
siblings.
same.
Well, that's awesome.
Yes. We so I'm the second of 7.
Okay.
And fundamentalists, right? So my parents, they fucked for the Lord.
Every
They
sperm is
had
sacred, right?
So you have to do it. And as a kid, I always kind of thought that's what it was, but I didn't want to think it was actually that crazy. And I asked my mom, it was after they divorced. And I said, why did you have so many kids? And she was like, we thought that's what God wanted. And I was like, wow, so it's true.
Man.
Now, 2 of those are with her boyfriend, but I consider them my siblings. But the 5 of us, we kind of had what I think is a trauma bond from growing up. We're all super tight. I'm very lucky that they've been super supportive. So yeah, as hard as it is, I have a lot of great friends. One that I was homeschooled with that we're still good friends today. I've known him since I was 10 years old. So we kind of trauma bonded too, because we both came from the same homeschooled fundamentalist Christian culture. So
What have you done to like break out of that? Because I know there's always like that, like, I want to break out of this like restrictive like environment. I was thankfully never homeschooled or in a private Christian or religious school, but I've heard other stories from people, and there's usually that like, I need to break free kind of need from very early on.
Breaking free was part of my journey to officially becoming who I was meant to be. I want to say by the time I was 17, 18, I was already thinking about leaving Christianity, but I didn't have the strength to do it. I was still living with my dad, and he was incredibly like, for him, it was all about image, right? It didn't really matter. When I was a Christian, he never asked me like if I was reading my Bible or anything like that. It was just always, I had to show up and make sure that people saw him with me sitting with him in church, right? It was just all about appearances. And so, was that?
Virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling. It's what the right wing does the best, and they love projecting it onto the left. Exactly. And it was so funny because by the time I was like 19, 20, I was just checked out. I was just going to church because I didn't want to piss off my dad. And I would come into service late, and he would look at me and he would go, oh. And I'd be like, what do you think he is, sitting up there taking attendance? Oh, Jenna, late again. Like,
Jenna, God's got the whole world to worry about, but he's going to be super concerned if you show up late to church.
How dare I? There's kids dying of cancer, but Jenna, no, late to church. Yeah, no. So he would do the stupid watch thing, and I would just be like, who cares, Dad? You sleep in church all the time anyway. So yeah. By the time I was about 20, I heard George Carlin, and he totally changed my life.
Wow.
He was my catalyst that pushed me to leave my Christian faith and become agnostic. And yeah, and it was specifically his bit about, you know, religion and the 10 Commandments, and it was everything he said about Christianity. I was like, it's like he like went inside my brain and wrote this shit down. And I was just like, no, I'm never gonna be a Christian ever again. And my dad pretty much had the same reaction as when I came out as trans. The only difference is, you know, I'm still quote unquote the right gender. So, you know, but my dad is incredibly emotionally closed off, just like Fort Knox times a million. And so could never have a real relationship with him. It was always superficial. But after I became Christian, just that superficial thin line just started to crack. And so when I came out as trans, that was all the excuse he needed.
So, do you mind if I take like a hard pivot here and ask you a little bit, like,
Sure.
because like I understand that you have a background in broadcasting. Do you mind telling us a
Yes.
little bit about
Yeah, so I was a theater kid,
that?
theater and choir, and I loved it.
I picked
And
up that
I
vibe
miss
too,
it.
so
Just a little bit, right?
we can spot each other. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, I real recognize real. Yes, so I, like every other kid in their 20s, I was kind of just spiraling. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And by the time I was 23, I found out that the local community college by my house had a fantastic broadcasting program. And I was like, you know what? I mean, those are very similar skills to theater. It's all a performance. It's a one-on-one performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But even though it's a one-on-one performance, you're talking to like millions of people. Well, I mean, if you know, you're Howard Stern or whatever. But the point is, it's a performance. And not only did I learn how to be on air, I learned how to, you know, edit phone calls. I learned how to put together music logs, put together commercials, voice them, produce them. I learned everything. It was fantastic. And after I got out of that program, I got myself into this basically it was like, it felt like an episode, it felt like I was in The Office. I I got to this little this old news station in San Jose that was basically on its way out. And like literally the first day I started, someone told me like, hey, this is probably not going to last for very long. And I ended up getting 5 years out of it.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I started in 2011, and I became a producer because I started as part-time traffic and weather on the weekends, working the bitch shift, 6 a.m. Horrible. So I learned how to do produce news, produce shows, produce commercials, voice commercials. Well, I mean, I already learned it from college, but yada yada yada. I learned to do it at a professional station. And I really felt like I was going to be able to make something out of it, make a career out of it. And a year after I came out, when I was still in my cross-dressing phase, the station finally went off the air for good. And I was lucky enough, there was an independently owned station. The owner was so cool. He gave everybody a year severance. I know.
Wow.
Crazy.
Sorry,
Did
does
that
he have
give
another
you,
business? I'm gonna go work there.
like,
Right.
I was gonna say, did that lead to anything else right there? Because like that's a lot of power coming from that experience, I'm thinking.
Yeah, no kidding. My thing was it was at that moment that I decided to go full-time, to start transitioning full-time. And logistically, it's broadcasting, it's all about who you know, like 98, 99%. And it's like what you know that keeps your job. It's a very tight, cliquey industry. And at that point in my life, I was more focused on becoming who I was meant to be. So I put everything in my life on hold to become who I was meant to be. And for a while, I didn't do shit because I had a year's worth of money. And I was like, I'm just going to take a little break. And I got into, eventually, I started working at a record store here in the Bay called Rasputin. And that was always a bucket list thing. I'm a big music dork. And I always wanted to work in a music store. Like, I watched Empire Records growing up, and I thought, oh, that's going to be me. You can see you're shaking your head. See you nodding, Kevin.
Yep, I've seen that. I remember. Yep.
It's a fantastic movie. And of course, High Fidelity with John Cusack. And
Yep.
I was like Jack Black's character.
Yep.
That pretentious, I was a pretentious metalhead who, like, well, that was more so college and high school. By the time I got older, I gave up on the whole having to be part of a clique scene. Mostly because I listened to a lot of new wave as well, and a lot of my dumb metal friends would make fun of me for it. And I would be like, you don't like New Order? You don't like, come on now. So yeah, I did that for a while, and then I found myself, I kind of just felt like ass backwards into tech, and that 2017. So I've been in tech since 2017, and that really started to help me finance my transition.
What do you mean tech?
I work a bunch of odds and ends contract jobs. Been with Google, been with Apple, been with Facebook.
Okay.
So do you plan on breaking back out into like away from tech and back into like actual broadcasting more?
I would love to do broadcasting again. I honestly have so many directions I want to go. I'm possibly thinking about going back to school. I'm also, what's that?
What would you go back to school for? Like, what's been the
that
thing
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I just probably, if anything, I probably would just finish my broadcasting degree. Since I already have half of it complete.
Okay. That's awesome.
I also am thinking about getting into politics.
Ooh.
I have a very political background, so
oh, awesome.
I endorse it. Yeah, because unfortunately, the reality of our bodies is that they are very political. There's no way around it because we don't get to choose that. Like, that is just how society views us. So it's either you try to stick your head in the sand, which would mean that you're just going to get covered in sand eventually and you're not going to see it happening, or
become political
you
terrorists.
get involved.
Would you like to begin?
I have two separate questions. The
Bring 'em
first one is based on something that you said earlier, and then the second one is one that I ask everybody. So the first one is, earlier when you were talking about how when you approach like joking about like as a comedian you do a lot of self-deprecation to make yourself more digestible to an audience. I would just ask, why do you do that, and do you believe that that's necessary?
Well, self-deprecation obviously comes from many different areas. It was something that we did in our family a lot. Was we razzed each other and we razzed ourselves. And part of it was what I mentioned earlier about it ties into a lot of my psyche with like my insecurities and whatnot. When I was coming out of being homeschooled and I had to figure out how to adapt to normal society, quote unquote. You know, it was one of the things I learned quickly was be a little bit self-deprecating and to not take things too serious. People would be more attracted to you and they would want to listen more to what you have to say. Part of it is it's part of my people-pleasing personality.
But do you
you
think
have
that should be necessary for trans people to have to put themselves in that light for people who aren't trans to be able to consume us?
no, I would say you don't have to. And it's something that I never really thought about not doing, because I've done it my whole life. But no, I mean, I certainly don't think you have to. I think that is actually, it's not something I really thought about. So like, I actually really appreciate that.
And then my last question, the question I ask everybody at this point is, if you could take like just a moment and speak to anyone who's walked your path, any trans people, trans femmes, or any trans people in broadcasting, or even a message to an earlier version of yourself, is there anything that you would say to them in order to give them strength?
Yeah, these are always so tough, but I think the best advice I could give to like a young me or anybody else is everything seems so overwhelming right now, but it's cliche as fuck, but it's so true. You just don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks and just keep doing you and be confident about it, because confidence goes a long way. And I think it's hard to stop something when somebody is so positively confident that it's either like people would just fall in line or they'll get behind you. And it's hard to see that when you're in your baby trans phase, when you have everything, the whole weight of your decision like collapsing on you, and you feel like you can't breathe because you have so much to do. But it's, the cliche, one step at a time. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
All right.
Thank you. That's all the questions from me.
Okay.
Jenna, as a theater person
Mm-hmm.
and as a trans person, what character do you most identify with?
That's also tough to say.
At this moment in time, it could change tomorrow. Who knows? I do the same thing.
Honestly, at this moment in time, in many ways, I see myself, and it's not necessarily theater, actually, it's more so television. I identify a lot with Midge Maisel from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
Because she's fabulous. She
course.
always is 1,000% like makeup, outfits, everything coordinates, down from the gloves she wears to the clutch that she carries to her makeup. And she's also just very bubbly. She's fun, and she's also crude, and she's fearless. And those are like the things that I always loved. I always wanted to be a person who is, I try to be as authentically me as I can. And I've always been drawn to the more fabulous like presentation, but still kind of keeping my metal / like punk rock edge about myself. And because you've always kind of, I'm a big music dork, right? And so when I was in high school and early college, it was all about being authentically metal. And it was, if you listen to mainstream music, that's sellout, poser. And, and I always like saw like, mainstream culture as lame in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I always secretly kind of liked it. And I always try to find a way to blend the two. And I feel like now that I'm trans, I could be more fabulous, but I could also stay rooted in my outlook on being a voice for the people. And it's a really hard thing to balance a lot of times. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
I almost was going to say, I don't think Midge Maisel is mainstream, if that's what you were saying, but then you kind of went on and I was like, oh, okay, I get now what you're.
Well, no. What makes her mainstream is her whole persona is she's the dirty housewife.
Oh, in that way, yes. In that,
Yes.
in external, like you, okay.
Yeah, she's fabulous. You know, she gives the persona that she's, you know, the barefoot pregnant in the kitchen type. But really, she is a person that thinks outside the box, and she's looking to pushing society towards a more open and progressive mindset while using dirty and thought-provoking humor to do it.
She's subversive, absolutely.
Yes. And that's
why
how I see
love
myself
her.
in a lot of ways. What's that?
I love her and I love you.
Thank you.
And
I love you too. I love all of you.
Like, I could just see wonderful things for you in the future. Just follow your Midge Maisel guide, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate that.
So Jenna, as we move forward and step away from this conversation and go back into our everyday lives, what message would you like to say moving forward that will help us get to a better place collectively?
Don't be afraid to speak your mind. Don't be afraid to challenge people who want to keep you down. The one thing I loved growing up, and I said this earlier, but it really rings true. When you are confident in what you believe, and when you are passionate and you know how to put it together, and you just stand strong and you don't back down, eventually people are going to see your authenticity and get behind you, I think. You know, and some might say that's idealistic, and I get that. But deep down in my heart, I've always felt you can't go wrong if you just speak out and don't do everything that you can to not let them win. So without a doubt, I would 1,000% say never let yourself be intimidated. Always be the intimidator when the situation calls for it.
Well, I absolutely love that. Okay, so that was so much fun, Jenna. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for letting me come crash your podcast. This was so much fun.
Yes, absolutely. So we're just going to do a quick outro. It has to be less than like 22 seconds. So make sure that we don't go on when I say goodbye really quick. So, and then we can say goodbyes for realsies. So, oh my God, Ocean, that was so much fun. I am so glad that I had you here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, and thank you for welcoming me back.
Absolutely. And Kevin, hi Kevin. It's so good to have had you join us today as our guest co-host. Thanks for being here.
You are welcome. This was very awesome. Thank you for offering me this guest host position here. And I enjoyed talking with Jenna, Ocean, and you, Caroline. This was wonderful.
Absolutely. And Jenna Daugherty, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my God, you are so welcome. Like I said, you took a chance on me. You saw me online from one comment, and I had an absolute blast getting to know all of you, and I love this so much. Definitely will come back whenever you want me to.
Absolutely. Okay, we did it. Cool. Now we can stop for there we go. Take off the shirt. Not the shirt, but well, that was fun. Thanks everyone. All right, how are we feeling? Was that good?
You good? I did. So
good.
do you put this up on YouTube then? I guess I didn't understand how all that works.
Yes, this uploads to Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon Music, and YouTube.